King Kong, arguably the first original movie monster to bless the silver screen, and debatably one of the first original blockbusters to be entirely based on an original story. The movie captured the imagination of the nation. The three main King Kong movies made so far have been attributed of being some of the most commercially successful movies made in their respected era, maintaining the relevancy of the name King Kong to this day. Of course, these are far from the only Kong movies. There have been many sequels/spin-offs of this franchise, and as any influential film series does, it creates a market for very similar types of films. The filmmakers of the original Godzilla film have shared on how much Kong was an inspiration to their own project. Both stories of King Kong and Godzilla were about larger-than-life creatures that go on a rampage, after being driven out of their natural habitat by mankind. But that's where the similarities between both films start and stop. Godzilla and his film series are largely their own thing, but then you get other monster movies where they're so similar to King Kong that they pretty much are the exact same movie in everything but in name. Growing up, I always remember my friends and family calling these sort of movies copycats, but I believe the term that my American viewers use are knockoffs. So today, let's take a look at 10 of these titles, as we search for the least best of these King Kong knockoffs. I better warn you, the viewers, now that in this program there's gonna be some shoddy special effects, poor plots, and some really cheesy acting, so viewer discretion is advised. But come on, you really want to see some of this stuff. Number 10. First up, this title is probably the oldest film we have on the list. This slot goes to the 1948 film The Unknown Island, released about roughly 15 years after the original King Kong movie. It in essence follows a very similar plot. Sailors that wind up on an uncharted island, home to some prehistoric animals. Aside from the film being the contemporary lost world of the 1940s, the feature doesn't really have a lot to offer for the adventure genre or the monster movie genre, and of course is nowhere near as revolutionary like the original King Kong film. But hey, this movie's got one thing over King Kong: it was filmed in colour, Cinecolor to be more precise, a 2-strip technique, which is not quite as colourfully rich as Technicolor. But hey, with a measly budget of $400,000, what else are you gonna do? The prehistoric creatures of the movie were brought to life via rubber suits, and yeah, they look pretty comical by today's standards. I suppose by this point, costumes for realistic looking dinosaurs hadn't quite came far enough yet. There was no expert knowledge on how to achieve it. The first Godzilla movie was still about 6 years away. The only pre-existing movie I can think of that tried to use realistic dinosaur costumes was 1940's 1 Million Years BC. The T-Rex suit that was used in the film only appeared for one scene, which a lot of the shots with the suit were concealed with foliage, and was edited with quick cuts, so you didn't really get a thorough look at the dinosaur. The Unknown Island, on the other hand, the dinosaurs are seen in broad daylight, broad horizons, and the shots linger on the dinosaurs, seeing them in all their glory, or lack thereof. Here's a gruesome behind-the-scenes story I read up upon. They filmed the live-action suits of the dinosaurs in the desert of Palmdale. While filming, one of the actors collapsed due to heat exhaustion and later passed away. The footage of the dinosaur falling was retained for the final print. This is a pretty extreme story, although I read up upon this on IMDb trivia, and I couldn't trace this story back to a legitimate source, so take this with a pinch of salt. There's also inanimate puppets like the Brontosaurus and a Dimetrodon. Their movements are more wooden than what you would have seen in a Jerry Anderson production. Although the most unique creature that appears in this movie and the most King Kong-like is the giant ground sloth. That is a really fearsome looking costume for a 1940s monster movie.
Sounds like something horrible's happening to him.
It even fights out with one of the carnivorous dinosaurs by the end. Oh, just like the fight, the editing is pretty rough. There's not a lot of vintage prehistoric movies I can think of that includes some kind of prehistoric mammal that isn't just a woolly mammoth. So it certainly does make the movie stand out in the vintage prehistoric genre. When I started making this video, I set up this ground rule that the only movies that I would be talking about either A, they took a major influence from the original King Kong story, and B, they feature a giant primate. I initially assumed that sloths were within the same family tree, but then after doing some research, I found out that sloths weren't exactly within the primate family. So what do I do now? I'm nearly done making this video. Do I backtrack? Do I delete this segment? Well, we all occasionally make cock-ups. As a result, I've decided to put this segment of the video at the very beginning of the ranking. Let's treat this movie as a bit of a warm-up mockbuster for the wonderful titles that are yet to come. By the way, the movie is actually in the public domain. There's been a ton of uploads of the film on YouTube. I was initially going to grab one of them, but I didn't like how compressed the uploads were. So I then went out hunting for the movie on DVD, but it's only ever been released on the format rather sporadically, meaning that prices online can sometimes get very silly. I won't say how much I paid for my copy, but it was definitely more money than I wanted to part with. So yeah, please like and subscribe so I can generate some of that revenue back. It's gonna be a hard one to explain to my accountant. Number 9. Our next film has two alternative titles. It's either known as Where Time Began or The Fabulous Journey to the Center of the Earth. This movie was released back in 1978, and putting the word fabulous in the title certainly does root it in the decade. The story of the film is largely based off the literacy tale Journey to the Center of the Earth. The movie was directed by Joan Pica Lamon. Looking at his filmography, his titles mainly involve cult films, straight from the creator who brought you Trumpy. I saw this movie a number of times when I was a kid, so I have quite a bit of sentimental nostalgia for this film, although I will admit it's definitely not a flawless film. It's quite slow paced and there's not much to the adventure, and the movie has quite a lot of setup but no payoff. For example, there's a mysterious character who appears in the film called Alton. He's separate from the main expedition group to the center of the Earth, and according to him, he began his journey 2 months earlier. He seems to already have extensive knowledge about the region that they're exploring in, and when something unexplainable happens, he always sidesteps from an answer, like how his burnt hand suddenly got healed. And near towards the end, we see that there's a futuristic city at the center of the Earth, inhabited by people that look exactly like Alton. On my first viewing, I thought it was a pretty fun mystery. However, none of it ever gets explained.
Certain concepts are not yet within the range of human comprehension.
There's no payoff, it just becomes a bit of a needless subplot. I know sometimes mysteries can be more fun in movies, but when there's so many plot convenient things that happens with no explanation, it just feels like the writer of the movie is kind of cheating with logic. Also, being an adaptation to Journey to the Center of the Earth, we are treated to some prehistoric monsters. The effects, well, I'll certainly say they're charming, but in a post-Star Wars world, it's nothing groundbreaking. Now, at this point in the video, I'm sure some of my viewers who may not be too familiar with this movie may be wondering, what's this film got to do with King Kong? Well, you see my gentle viewers, this picture also has a massive gorilla in it. The ape doesn't appear until about an hour and 5 minutes in, but when it does, oh, it's special. I do remember being particularly terrified when I first saw this as a kid. Yep, at one point in time, the effects were harrowing enough to terrify at least one 8-year-old. It's easily the best creature effect done in the film. Where Time Began is quite a mess of a film. The effects aren't stellar.
You can join me now, but take great care. I'll explain presently.
But the plot could have been held together with a solid script. The final storyline we have feels like a first draft of a script. It definitely needed a few more revisions. Number 8. So, what happens if you make a movie combining King Kong with Monty Python with the resources of an old Carry On movie? All of it directed by the same lady that brought you the Barbie movie. Well, hopefully you get something slightly better than Queen Kong. Certainly a unique product from the 70s. A British and West German co-production, retelling the story of King Kong, but now reversing the genders. Being about the director, Lou's habit, kidnapping street thief Ray Frey, to head off to Lazanga where they do the conga. From there, Ray is kidnapped by the natives, who gets captured for the 3rd time in a row in the movie by our titular title character, Queen Kong. Throughout the adventure, we're treated to some prehistoric monsters, which wouldn't look too out of place in an old Doctor Who episode. And dinosaurs is one thing that this film has over the 1976 remake. Rick Baker, eat your heart out.
Kick him in the, below the belt.
Just as this movie is the reverse gender version of King Kong, it's also the British version of King Kong, quite literally, as the finale is set in London. Some of these model shots were filmed at the Bournemouth theme park off Tectonia. The attraction and theme park today are no longer around. The movie also includes a pro-feminist message, with Ray delivering a speech for equality, which inspires an uproar of women to stand for their rights. Now, I personally identify as a bit of an imbecile. I make silly online videos, I can't comprehend the complexity with equality in our world. But with this movie being set in a world where it's primarily female dominated, and the women in this movie hasn't particularly been undermined by their gender. Okay, maybe there are quite a fair few jokes at the women's expense in this film. Am I the only one that feels that this speech is a bit left field for this kind of story? But then yet again, given that there probably wouldn't have been a lot of female dominated movies of the era, maybe the filmmakers felt it was an appropriate opportunity. But I'm not too sure if this would have been the sort of movie that feminists would have liked at the time. The movie Queen Kong, it's a bit of an acquired taste. As a proud Brit who loves his British movies, this British comedy is certainly not one of the best. But then there's other British comedies I'd certainly would watch Queen Kong over. I'd say Queen Kong falls into your typical early morning Sunday film. It'll make you smile, it'll make you chuckle, but it's not a movie I'd feel strongly to go back to anytime soon. The same year Queen Kong came out was also the same year that the Dino De Laurentiis movie was also released. Dino De Laurentiis, along with RKO Pictures, put a stop for Queen Kong to get a release, particularly in the UK. The movie only ended up getting a limited release in regions such as Germany and Italy. The main leads, Rua Leska and Robin Asquith, were quite relieved that the movie didn't see the light of day. Over the years, the movie has been made more readily available on home media, although as of 2025, the movie hasn't yet received any official release in the UK. However, UK buyers can pick up imported DVDs of the movie for not too steep of a price. Number 7. Yeti, the giant of the 20th century. Industry tycoon Morgan Hummercut, along with Professor Waterman, attempt to unfreeze a giant prehistoric primate. Morgan is accompanied by his grandchildren. His youngest grandson, Herbie, had a hand in discovering the Yeti with his parents, although sadly him and his parents were involved in a helicopter accident. Herbie was the only survivor, but is now mute because of the accident. They eventually resurrect the Yeti via lifting him into the air, as a way to simulate the Himalayas atmosphere. This part in the story certainly seems like something that would belong in an old Toho movie. Anyway, it works, it resurrects the Yeti. From here, the Yeti kidnaps the children, and the rest of the movie is spent trying to get the Yeti under control. This movie was an Italian and Canadian co-production, with the movie being produced in both English and Italian. And let me tell you, there is definitely quite a bit of ADRing going on in the film.
Okay.
The atmosphere up there is particularly full of ozone, ultraviolet rays.
A lot of the time, they just end up cutting away from the character that's talking. Little bit of a sneaky way to be more laid back on the ADRing.
I can't trust you anymore. When I needed your help, you refused. You're only concerned about your job.
Jane, I'm concerned about you, about us.
By the way, the actress who plays Jane, Antonelli, was at the age of 16 when she made the movie. Yeah, and this isn't the last of the slightly yikes moments. By the way, with all the Canadian flags, you definitely wouldn't miss that this was a Canadian film. Fun fact, producer of the 1976 King Kong remake, Dino De Laurentiis, announced that he was planning to make a movie about the abominable snowman titled Yeti, which would have been filmed within the Himalayas. However, this movie never came to fruition, and it's been hypothesized that Yeti, Giant of the 20th Century, was a film solely made to cash in on the unmade De Laurentiis film. The effects for the movie are quite hit and miss. They fit in line with a Toho production from the 60s. But the same year that Yeti came out, Star Wars was released several months earlier. So Yeti was already looking pretty dated by comparison. The actor who played the Yeti was Mimo Creo. For his face, he's not given a mask or any extensive facial prosthetics. It's largely just his bare face. On one hand, it's more complimentary to the more sincere tone of the film. Seeing more familiar facial features makes you feel more sincere for the Yeti. But then on the other hand, comparing it to other King Kong movies, it makes the Yeti's monster costume feel like the poor man's version. It's a bit of a tonally conflicting movie. It seems to be aiming for being a family-friendly movie. The Yeti isn't seen killing civilians. The only characters that get killed off by the Yeti is the villains, which all of their deaths are quite heavily played down. But then on the other hand, you get small moments that are a little bit inappropriate for the family genre. Like, there's a moment where Jane unintentionally brushes up against the Yeti's nipple. The nipple then becomes hard. Ugh, I hope for Jane's sake that it was just a change in temperature for the Yeti. It doesn't help that the other adults teasingly refer to her as the Yeti's love interest.
Maybe you for his wife.
She might have some duties to fulfill if she stays overnight.
Although, to be fair, it is mostly played quite innocently. The movie attempts to be so whimsical, there's even a dog that accompanies the family. Yeti, Giant of the 20th Century is a pretty 70s movie. There's a lot of contemporary music throughout. This movie even has a disco song. It got released as a single. It was titled Yeti, Funky Disco Sound. The song was created by the band The Yetikans. A pretty coincidental name right there. For a very long time, this was an incredibly elusive movie to find. The only way to watch this movie if you were lucky enough to track down its original VHS release. It wasn't until in 2016 that it finally got a DVD release, and then eventually was made available on Blu-ray. It now gives us the opportunity to watch these stunning special effects in high definition. Number 6. In 2005, the Asylum brought us King of the Lost World. Hey, you get it? King like Kong, and the Lost World like, well, the dinosaur book? Doing a knockoff of two jungle adventure stories in one movie? Why, that's just like hitting two birds with legal trouble. There's a reason why in that title it's just got King and not Kong.
Him? Who?
You cannot speak his name.
Or else there'll be copyright infringement through the roof. King of the Lost World got released on the 15th of December in 2005, just one day after the wide release of the Peter Jackson remake.
Coincidence? I think not!
And because the movie is very loosely adapting the Lost World story, the filmmakers had the nerve to put this on the front cover. The epic story that inspired King Kong and Jurassic Park? Yeah, nice try of trying to seep out those movie shadows. Alright, we better unpack what happens in this feature. The movie quite literally starts with a crash. Yeah, this movie wastes no momentum. Just 3 minutes in, and we already get to see the giant ape. And it was all within a dream sequence. Wait a minute, how did the stewardess, Gloria, even get that dream to begin with? We find out in the film that she's never been to the island before. So for poor Gloria, her nightmare will be a reality soon. I will say though, putting aside the effects, the plane set is pretty convincing, and within at least the first 10 minutes, the way it's shot and edited is pretty well rounded. During the crash, the plane ended up in 2 pieces, with the front of the wreckage on the other side of the jungle. So from there, a small group heads out in the hopes to find other survivors, and maybe use the cockpit's radio to call for help. Along the journey, they encounter a giant spider.
Oh, behind you!
It turns out the wreckage that they saw in the distance is actually from a much older plane, and it's been stripped of its electronic goods, so it hasn't even got a radio they can use. So they're gonna have to keep on exploring the island until they can find their part of the plane. Overnight, they're joined by another character, only ever referred to as Lieutenant Challenger. He was seen briefly at the beginning of the film, but now he's here to join the party in their mission. He recommends that their best bet is to find a black box inside the cockpit, as it will pinpoint their exact location for rescuers, or something along those lines.
Damn it, if I just knew the speed and the altitude of the plane before it broke apart. I'm sure I could pinpoint the exact location.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure you can't calculate plane debris in the same way as a mathematical problem. Oh, so the Colonel has a suitcase that he doesn't want to part with. I'm pretty sure that won't come up again. That following morning, tension is growing in the group and... Wait a minute, did he have that gun on him the whole time? Alright, so it turns out that the Colonel is on some secret mission, this being unrelated to them crashing on the island. But then, since he was on board the plane like a regular passenger, how was he able to carry on a live gun as hand luggage, especially in a post-9/11 world? And he also has a secret stash of cigars.
That guy's got a gun and cigars. Bastard.
Hey, the movie's reviewing itself for me. Nice. They find a military jet and find a radio device on board the aircraft that might be able to send out a signal for help. While they're trying to figure out how to get the device to do what they want, they soon get attacked by giant insects. Eventually, the group gets ambushed by the locals. You've got a gun in your hand, just shoot him, just shoot him, just shoot him, and there goes the gun. Jeez, I thought you were meant to be the smart one of the group. They enter the tribe camp, and I'm quickly scared that this is going to be turned into an adult movie. Oh, dominating chief. I can't quite say it's my cup of tea. There's a moment where the women are taken away and they're going to become part of the tribe, and the way it's sort of framed, it seems like there's a lot of sexual tension, as I'll call it. It's revealed that the tribal people actually originate from the mainland, and they too were plane wrecked on the island. Over the years, they've become savages, and are planning to sacrifice some of our main leads. Now, unfortunately, like the 1970s King Kong movie, there's no dinosaurs in this film, but we are treated to some dragons. Yeah, the CGI still doesn't get any better.
Holy shit!
And there he is, the king of the Lost World himself, the giant ape, who appears in the last 8 minutes of the movie. I can't really say it was worth it, but this small scene always makes me laugh. What an amazing death scene. Every time the ape appears, the camera always gets really shaky, so you never get a good look at the beast. In conclusion, the movie is, well, not flawless. The story is riddled with imperfections, and there's amateur filmmaking mistakes throughout the picture. The amount of times we get out of focus shots is unbelievable. Chaps, the camera's out of focus. Do you want to maybe do a take 2? And the sound mixing isn't much better.
Move on then.
No.
The movie takes itself way too seriously to treat it like goofy fun, and there isn't much to the jungle adventure. And if you're only watching this movie for the giant ape itself, the creature only makes a brief cameo at the beginning, and is fleetingly seen throughout the finale. So if you want to seek out some tremendous CGI from the mid-2000s, then you know exactly where to skip to in the movie. Number 5. Next up, we have the 2012 direct-to-video movie Bigfoot, brought to us from The Asylum. The same company and 2 King Kong mockbusters in a row? Well, The Asylum is really spoiling us today. The 2012 Bigfoot counts as a King Kong knockoff, right? I mean, Bigfoot's meant to be a giant ape, Kong's a giant ape, it's close enough, right? Well, actually, in China, the movie was given the subtitle King Kong 3. What a great way to mislead your customers. By the way, what happened to King Kong 2? Alright, I better get started into what happens in this movie. The story is set in South Dakota, where we start with a hunter shooting a bear. He seems pretty smug about it, but not for long. And there's Bigfoot. You gotta love in these Asylum movies, they don't waste any time but show the monster within the first minute of the film. And unlike King of the Lost World where you barely saw the ape, Bigfoot here gets quite a bit of screen time. The main heart of the story is about 2 former rockstar friends, Harleen, a cynical rockstar meathead, and Simon, who's a bit of an extreme environmentalist. They both hate each other's guts. And it all has to do with Simon's mum.
He's just upset because I know his mother better than he does.
Oh, that's right. Did I fail to mention that I slept with his mom?
They're also both pretty unlikable characters. Harleen carelessly puts on a concert, even after being warned that Bigfoot's in the area, and eventually goes out to attempt to kill Bigfoot, or just toyingly says that he's going to do bad things to Bigfoot to wind up Simon.
Now, I think the only reason you want to kill Bigfoot is just to piss me off.
You mean kind of the way you killed our record deal to piss me off?
Simon is pretty careless about human lives in the story. He's more occupied of saving Bigfoot's life than anybody else. And how Bigfoot's portrayed in the movie, he's not necessarily a character I feel humble by. If, let's say, hunters were trying to shoot Bigfoot, and then from there Bigfoot responded in self-defense and it all got heavily escalated, then yeah, I would feel sorry for Bigfoot. Or maybe if they go for the direction that Bigfoot's family got killed by poachers or something.
What do you say to the charges that you care more about keeping Bigfoot safe than protecting the community? Don't you think your campaign is a little insensitive?
I understand the sentiment. One of my friends was killed in the attacks. But we have to take the bigger view. We can learn from this animal. If we can repair the harm that we've done, it's my belief that those who died will not have died in vain.
But Bigfoot has just been randomly killing people right from the get-go without being provoked. At the very least, Bigfoot should be detained for going on a killing spree. Frustratingly, there's no character that puts either Harvey or Simon in their own place. And the movie never becomes self-aware of the men's actions. So we're left with 2 leads who are very out of touch, which just made it for a very frustrating viewing experience. The climax comes to a head with both men duking it out on top of Mount Rushmore, with Bigfoot steadily approaching. And if things couldn't get any more dangerous, the military decides to take Bigfoot out with a missile.
You remember when I toured with your mom in '86? You didn't. I did. I played ball in the house.
Well, I think we can conclude that both men are as bad as each other. Harvey's holding on to the ledge, and Simon shows compassion by reaching out to save him. And then Bigfoot reaches out to help out as well. Aw, isn't that nice? All these horrible characters do have a heart. But it's all too late though, as the missile comes in. Did you see that? Harvey was falling to his death before the missile hit. Did Simon just intentionally let go of his hand? Well, from that, I guess Simon is the real monster of the story. Number 4. In 1965, the Indian film company called, I'm not going to be able to pronounce that. Sorry. Gave us the likely unlicensed movie, Tarzan and King Kong. The movie's in Hindi and there's no subtitles available, so I didn't know what was going on when I was watching the movie. But according to my trustworthy site, IMDb, the plot's about a jungle queen who captures the survivors of a plane crash and plans to sacrifice them. Thankfully, Tarzan's on hand to save the passengers. Sounds like your average Tarzan plot if you ask me. Also, as stereotypical with Indian movies, this film is also a musical. I love Tarzan just cluelessly watching this woman dance. It feels oddly in character for him. So there's one thing the filmmakers got right. Anyway, we get plenty of Tarzan action throughout the film. But what about King Kong? Well, in the finale, we do get a gorilla who's about the exact same height as a man. So that's a bit of a cop-out. But hey, if it makes it up to you, we do get a one-on-one fight between Tarzan and the person in the ape suit. Number 3. Our next movie is Ape. It's the famous B movie where you've got a shoddy made ape costume flipping the finger to the camera. I don't think much more needs to be said than that. So on to the next entry. Alright, let's actually take a look at this film. And let me warn you, it's a pretty peculiar one. The movie starts with our titular ape character, already captured and just sailing by the coast of South Korea. However, the primate escapes via blowing up the ship?
Oh shit.
I don't know, they don't really explain it. Anyway, after that, the ape pretends to fight with a living shark. After that, the ape causes mischief and havoc throughout South Korea. Meanwhile, there's a subplot of a film crew making a movie, with the female lead, Marilyn Baker, and her lover Tom try desperately hard to avoid the massive ape, as the ape seems to be quite keen to Miss Baker. This movie was a South Korean and US co-production, and in Korea it was given the title of King Kong's Great Counterattack. Yeah, you're not exactly skirting around the copyright, are you? Well, funny thing, when the movie was initially announced, it was called The New King Kong, and was promoted as if that was going to be the legitimate title. But then when RKO Pictures filed a $1.5 million lawsuit, the title of the movie was changed to Ape for its US release. However, in promotional material, the tagline, not to be confused with King Kong, was added into the marketing. But then this got Ape's production company in trouble yet again, as they were still using the name King Kong in its promotion. It certainly seems like this was a very stressful movie to put together. On some sources I've read up online, this movie was intended to be a comedy, and that certainly does explain some of the escapades with the ape. Although the majority of the human scenes are played very straight. So if the film is meant to be a comedy, it's a pretty dry comedy. This interesting movie was released in the US just roughly 2 months before the Dino De Laurentiis remake. The budget for the Paramount King Kong remake was between $23 to $24 million. As for Ape, its budget was about $23,000. All of the live action scenes were filmed within about 14 days. That's probably why so many shots are done in really long takes. To an extent, it feels like a bloody live theatre show. Although the special effects was only given a budget of $1,200, which 50 years later, that would be about roughly $6,000. Exceedingly quite low for a blockbuster of today. And let me tell you, that budget really does mirror what we see on screen. By the way, can we just keep in mind that that scene was meant to be just set in South Korea? I guess snakes are quite unusually large in that region of the world. The structure of the movie is really poor. About half the movie is made up with the ape doing daft and silly things, intercut with a poorly written melodrama. The only bits that are really worth watching are the ones with the ape. They are pretty amusing, but the whole film is really slow pace. It's quite a slog to get through. Also, a lot of the directing and staging is quite poorly done. So take this scene for example. Miss Baker is doing a scene for her film. Looking like she's in peril, the ape oversees this, and mistaking that she's in danger, he comes over to grab her, carrying her off. However, the way it's shot in the final film, it looks like Baker runs off set. She runs away so far that it doesn't even look like that she's in range of the camera anymore, and she's still playing the part. And then she seemingly doesn't see the massive ape hand in front of her. You're sort of scratching your head over the logic, and it makes the character of Baker seem quite gullible. But in the rest of the movie, I don't think that's what they were intending for the character. Additionally, a lot of the line deliveries leave a lot to be desired.
Almost 36 feet tall. Wow.
Initially, I thought with this movie being a South Korean co-production, that the director was Korean and maybe English wasn't their first language, hence why we've got pretty ropey lines. Looking it up, the director was Paul Eden, and he's an American, so it doesn't seem like the fault was the language barrier. It was probably because the movie was very hastily put together, a low budget and a quick shoot. Maybe the filmmakers didn't have a chance to pause and think about what on earth they were filming, and could have perhaps thought up another way to make the film more well-rounded. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, this movie was filmed in 3D, and the 3D shots are jarring to say the least. Just bring things closer to the camera and there you go, you can really see the depth, and make it feel incredibly jarring if you're only watching it in 2D. Number 2. Our next movie is titled King Dong. I won't beat around the bush here. The movie King Dong is a straight up adult film about a couple who wind up shipwrecked on a remote island. By the way, we don't see this thrilling action. Instead, our male lead Alex gives us a catch up on all the exciting action that happened off camera.
The last thing I remember was Danny throwing 2 life rafts overboard. I got to one of them and pulled you in.
Yeah, that makes for an exciting movie, missing all the exciting stuff. On the island, they encounter a tribal gang and some Amazonian warriors. From there, they make an attempt to escape the natives, before they get tied down into doing any more, grown-up things, as I'll call it. But this adult film didn't just spare no expense, oh no. We're also treated to some stop-motion dinosaurs, plus a giant ape. They're a visual treat and easily the best thing about the movie. Apparently the stop-motion dinosaur effects were recycled from another movie, titled Lost on Adventure Island. However, I couldn't find a source to back this up, and I found on a couple of platforms that were streaming the movie. They were calling the feature either King Dong or Lost on Adventure Island. And if you look on this poster for Lost on Adventure Island, at the bottom it names the same cast and crew for King Dong. And if you read the end credits, they refer to this production as the latter title. So as far as I'm aware, I think they're one and the same film. According to the end credits, the stop motion was applied by Lenny Carvello and Coiga Dane. I couldn't find any additional information of what the pair have been up to since. The stop motion scenes are certainly the best bit of the movie. There are quite a fair few ambitious matte painting shots. Some of them do look better than others, but I imagine for an adult movie, they didn't have a disposable budget. The film was directed by Yankee Herodish, with this movie being his only film credit. He also doubles up playing the smaller ape in the movie called Buddy. I believe he used to run a website about the movie. Unfortunately though, the site is no longer up, and every time I try and access it on the Wayback Machine, I only get as far as the home page, and I just get an error with all the other pages. According to a lot of the synopses I've read online, King Dong in the story is meant to be a female, so the movie should technically be called Queen Dong instead of King Dong, although King Dong is never explicitly referred to as a female throughout the film. As well, the giant gorilla is never once referred to as King Dong. Instead, they're only ever referred to as Super Simium.
I got a super name for you. I'll call you Super Simian!
And in the end credits, Super Simium is referred to by him and his pronouns. So much of King Dong being a lady. Anyway, the stop motion scenes are certainly the highlight of the movie. Everything else, well, it sort of depends if adult movies are already your type of cup of tea. If so, then this is probably the best King Kong knockoff of them all. Or if you're reserved like my mum, then you can very easily just watch the stop motion segments on YouTube. And number 1. And here we are. My choice for the number 1 worst King Kong knockoff is the Mighty Gorga. Released all the way back in 1969. The plot follows a circus owner, Mark Revington, who, on the verge of bankruptcy, heads off to Africa in the pursuit to find a giant gorilla. His mission is to capture it and bring it back to the circus, in the hopes that it may draw interest back to his failing business.
Wanna, boss man. I'm sorry, but I don't understand. You speak English?
Did I mention this movie was made in the 1960s? Anyway, the titular gorilla, the Mighty Gorga, makes his first appearance just 35 seconds in, and whew, that mask. I was talking to my mother the other day about the original King Kong film. She said to me that she never really liked the design on Kong. She thought Kong looked a bit cartoony. But here in the Mighty Gorga, I can't quite get past Gorga's bulging eyeballs. As my mum would say, he looks a bit cartoony and silly. He's a pretty comical looking movie monster if you ask me. The special effects in the movie are, well, pretty special. Even though Gorga appears so early in the movie, he appears rather sporadically throughout the rest of the film. A lot of the movie is Mark and female heroine April travelling through the jungle. I remember at college, my teacher used to always say, is that when you start to see student films where they do nothing but walk around, that's when you know that they've run out of ideas to film. It happens quite a bit in the movie where the filmmakers seem to be so proud of the B-roll footage that they filmed, that we've at least got to dedicate about 5 minutes of the movie to watch some of it. It makes the movie quite uneventful. You could probably cut a lot of this out, but then the movie probably wouldn't reach its 84-minute running time. This isn't a movie I could strongly recommend, although in my eyes there's certainly one big highlight that this movie has to offer. In the story, there are meant to be other beastly creatures, like the finale features a cave monster, although the monster is only represented by stock footage from the movie Goliath and the Dragon. Although there is one part of the movie where the filmmakers did create an original dinosaur for the film. It occurs about 1 hour and 3 minutes into the picture. April and Mark come across some Easter eggs, and then all of a sudden they're confronted by the dinosaur, and wow, look at that. That dinosaur hand puppet is amazing. To tell you all a little secret, when I began my YouTube channel, I really wanted to make that dinosaur hand puppet my unofficial mascot. I just thought as a kid that dinosaur looks so cheesy but cool. Now, don't get me wrong, the effects are pretty unspectacular, but I swear I'm the only person on the planet, or the only mad person, to actually really like this dinosaur design. The dinosaur hand puppet would as well appear in another exploitation movie, titled 1 Million AC/DC, which treated to some more foreground perspectives. The movie is a soft-core adult film, so under YouTube's policy, I can't show too much of it.
It's like going back in time to my first virginal sacrifice.
But believe me when I say, you're really not missing too much. There's no plot, and it's quite boring.
The spear goes into the monster loses his mind.
And the production values are really low. You've got a caveman here who's wearing a nappy as a loincloth. There is a giant gorilla in the movie, and when I say giant gorilla, I mean slightly taller than your average man. Anyway, this movie was released as a double package on DVD alongside the Mighty Gorga. This physical release was distributed under the banner of Something Weird Video, a company well known for releasing long-forgotten B-movies to DVD. This DVD package is loaded with extra content, such as vintage movie trailers to old B-movies, and a 20-minute short amateur film titled Nightmare about a chap who travels back in time and is confronted with all sorts of stop-motion creatures, including a giant gorilla. There's many more short films included on the disc, although be aware I wouldn't call them politically correct.
In those days it really was a man's world. In the same sense it is today. He has to do everything.
Even though the main featurettes are very rough around the edges, the extra features almost make it worthwhile picking up the DVD set. The movie was directed by David L. Heward, who additionally performed in the ape costume. His other titles involve Dr. Terror, Gallery of Horror, and The Wizard of Mars. Not exactly classic titles. But then he would go on to be a special effects creator for movies like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and then a producer for visual effects for titles like Inspector Gadget 2 and Rabbit Proof Fence. So, you know, I guess you gotta start somewhere. Apparently, at the time of me recording this video, he's still alive, living in Los Angeles at the age of 86. I would love to do an interview with Mr. Hewitt, because I want to know what on earth was going through the minds of the filmmakers while making the Mighty Gorga. And also, most importantly of all, whatever happened to that dinosaur hand puppet? Because if it's still around, I would buy it. It's the sort of thing I would proudly hang in my house. Anyway, the Mighty Gorga, an 11 out of 10, the best King Kong knockoff, no, the best King Kong remake of all time. Anyway, I'm going to end off by showing you the most terrifying footage of a dinosaur eating a human.